Welcome geniuses, I'm Genie, your best buddy for A-levels. In this channel, we'll bring you to explore the secret formula behind success.
Hi, today's lesson is about representation of data, and the subtopic is cumulative frequency graph. Okay, in a cumulative frequency graph, we will draw the cumulative frequency against the upper boundaries. All right, then the axis involving variables should include the unit when labeled. Okay, we will look at the example later, and we draw the smooth curve. When we draw the cumulative frequency graph, we label the x and y axis. So the y axis should be the cumulative frequency. And then the upper boundaries, we look at the questions we have. It can be the length of fish. Okay, the length of fish. And then we include unit when labeled, right? So the length of fish could be in cm. All right. And then we plot the graph and we join with a smooth curve. Okay, so we will look at the example later. Okay, the advantage of using the cumulative frequency graph is to estimate the median and the interquartile range. So we are able to get the lower quartiles and upper quartile, right? Can be estimated. So the disadvantage is the visual impact can be altered by using different scales. So if we have different scales, the graph might look slightly wider or slightly thinner, then the visual impact will be different, right? So now we are having the example here, okay, from a past year question. So this is the question from February, March 2020. And since 2020 onwards, the paper, statistic paper, will be called paper 5. So this is the paper 5, variance 2. And the question 7. Helen measures the length of 150 fish of a certain species in a large pond. So this length, correct to the nearest centimeter, are summarized in the following table. Okay, so the length in cm, and then the frequencies are given. Okay, part A, draw a cumulative frequency graph to illustrate the data. Okay, first thing is we need to determine the cumulative frequency when you are given the frequency table here. So I would add one row here, label it as cumulative frequency. Okay, how do we find out cumulative frequency? So for the first interval, we have 15 data, right, from 0 to 9. So when we are going on to the second interval, from 10 to 14, there are 48 frequency, 48 data. So now we are trying to look for from the 14, the fish of length of 14 cm and below, total how many fish. What do? We just take 15 plus 48. And then we will get the cumulative frequency for 14 cm and below. So 15 plus 48. 63. So we get 63, right? Then now we are looking at the 19 cm and below. So what do? We take 63 plus 66. And altogether we have 129 fishes. 129. Okay, and for the last interval, 20 to 30, so we're looking for 30 cm and below, total how many fishes are there? So 129 plus 21, and altogether 150. So when you calculate the cumulative frequency, the last value will be the total number of fishes. That means there will be the total number of the data. All right, so that is how we calculate the cumulative frequencies. The value we obtain 15, 63, 129, and 150. Now we have to look at the interval given. So as you can see, is from 0 to 9 cm for the first interval, and second interval is from 10 to 14. So which means 9 to 10, there is a gap, and the length is correct to the nearest centimeter, means we are going to find out the boundaries on our own. So how do we find out the boundary? We will look for the upper limit of the first interval plus with the lower limit of the second interval and divided by 2. And by doing this, we will be getting 9.5. All right, so we do the same. We should be getting 14.5 here, and this should be 19.5. And for the last interval, the upper limit, we will get 30.5. Okay, so what do we need to find out is the first interval, the lower limit is a 0, right? So based on our calculations, we should be getting negative 0.5 here. But based on the nature of these questions, this is talking about the length of fish. And since this is a real life example, we are not supposed to have negative length, correct? So instead of taking negative 0.5, we will just take 0 as the lower boundary for the first interval. All right. So once we have found these boundaries, now we are having the data we have, and we need to draw the cumulative frequency graph. So let's see the answer given here. Now, for the first interval, first point that we need to plot, the first interval from 9.5 cm and below, total how many features are there? We have 15, all right? So the first point that we should label is 9.5 and 15, okay? So with the grid given, we try to plot the point. So you see, this is the point here. And this is where the 9.5. Okay, and the value is in between 10 and 20, exactly in the middle. So it's 15. So we plot the point. All right, so we do the same for the rest of the points. Now, the second value means from the length of fish 14.5 cm and below, total how many fishes are there? So that is the reasons why we take 15 plus 48, and total we have exactly 63 fishes. So which is the cumulative frequency we have here. So 14.5 and 63. And as well as from 19.5 cm and below, total how many fishes are there? So this is why 63 plus 66, and we get 129. 19.5 and 129. And the last point would be 30.5 cm and below. And supposedly, we should have all the fishes. So that's why it's the total of them, 150. Right? So we label it on the grid provided, and we can get all the points here. Okay, so this point, and this point. Okay, then we join these points with a smooth curve. Okay, one more thing is to make sure we join the graph to the ground. So in this particular example, we look at the first interval lower boundary. All right. So as is a real life example, the length of fish cannot be negative. So we take 0 as the lower boundary here. So when we join the graph to the ground, we join it to 0 at this particular example. Okay. So we have the graph drawn. And don't forget to label the y-axis is the cumulative frequency, and the x-axis, okay, in this case, is looking at the length of fish. So although we label all against the upper boundary, but for this example, these questions, we are looking at the length of fishes, right? So we label it as the length, and if there are units involved, then we label the units as well. Okay, so and then this is a complete cumulative frequency graph drawn. And that will be the answer for part A. Right? Okay, now we have a look of part B. 40% of these fish have a length of dcm or more. Use your graph to estimate the value of D. All right, so 40% of these fish. So if we are looking for 40% of the fish, 150 fishes here, and 40% of them, so we times 40 over 100, right, percentage. And we know the value should be 60. So the question is asking for the 60 fishes that the lengths are greater than, right, because of dcm or more. So when we try to use the cumulative frequency graph to get the value, we have to look at the upper half of the cumulative frequency graph. So that is why we have to take 150 minus 60. And the value we get is 90 here. So when we read the graph, we are looking at the upper half, this part of the graph, like 150 until 90, this value. So these 60 fishes here. All right. And from the graph we plot the dotted line until reaching the graph we drawn and read towards the x-axis, and we have this value found. And this value read from the graph we have should be 15, 16, 17, and then this should be 16.5. All right, so we can answer the part 2. 40% of these fish have a length of 16.5 cm or more. So the small value of D, small letter value of D is 16.5. All right, use your graph, estimate the value of D. So you can show the calculations at the side, then calculating that is 60, and because of the way the question put it is dcm or more, so you have to look at the upper half of the graph. So which means when we read from our cumulative frequency graph, we read from 90. So these 60 values here, the 60 fishes. And that is why we get the small letter D value to be 16.5. And that will be the answer for part B. All right. Okay. So this is a question similar to what we have discussed, finding the cumulative frequency graph. So do try out this question on the grid and answering the part 2 and 3. And that's all for this video. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video. I will see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye.
That's all for today's video. If you're interested in more genuine sharing by other geniuses, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to turn on the notification bell, ding dong. Also, if you're struggling with 1 or 2 past year questions and the mark scheme just doesn't seem to help, Genie has got you covered. Feel free to let us know what question it is by filling in the Google form linked in the description below. GenieUs Hub will get genius teachers to fulfill your request for the solution. Genie, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.